It's Tuesday, the 12th of October, and it's time to get a grin on with the GrinCast. I'm your host, Rose, and joining me today are Ace.
Hello.
And returning from a hiatus of several weeks, I imagine, Puce.
Hello.
Speaking of companies that want things, Nintendo want you to stop pirating their video game. I imagine they want you to stop pirating everything. Nintendo hate people stealing their stuff. Metroid Dread, which came out last Friday, I believe. Is now fully playable in 4K on PC. It's not even been a week. It's been 4 days since the game released, and you're already able to get it up and running on your PC. Nintendo, of course, are not happy about it. Nintendo get pissed off if you steal the 47th released game on the Nintendo Entertainment System from 1983, but that's Nintendo for you. What do you guys think of this? Piracy is something that's always existed in video games. You know, it's pirating PC games, Sony games, Xbox games, etc. But pirating and successfully emulating a brand new release from a console and a game that doesn't even run on the hardware, i.e. a PC, this is new. Especially in modern gaming, this is a very new thing, I think.
The Switch is certainly the first console that's been emulated so quickly after release. You've been able to run Switch games perfectly for a few years now, on the most part, so it's not actually a surprise to me that Metroid Dread works, because it's a side-scrolling Metroidvania. So this is, in theory, fairly simple to for the emulator to work out how to run.
Yeah, and to run at a decent speed. It's not the most complex game visually, so it's not like it's a huge burden on GPUs compared to getting other games to run. It's like if you were to compare it to, say, Breath of the Wild, which is the other popular Switch game that people like to emulate.
Yeah, that took a few weeks, maybe a couple of months to work out how to run properly.
Yeah, it's also a lot more taxing on the hardware than something like Metroid Dread is. The whole thing with the Switch being emulatable so quickly, I think, is mostly down to the hardware of the Switch itself, because it's very off the shelf. So the folks behind emulators and stuff kind of already have a baseline to work towards, whereas with like the PS3, which is still not perfectly emulated because it's so complicated with all its custom chips and things, it's just a lot harder. It definitely opens, like you say, with it being a current gen system, the ability to emulate games so easily. It's assuming you've got a pretty beefy PC. It's not like anyone with a 5-year-old, 6-year-old PC will be able to run these games, because it's just still too taxing. But if you've got a fairly decent rig, it's pretty straightforward. And I think it is a problem, but I don't. Emulators themselves aren't the issue. It's the ease of which getting the games, which is the problem. Which is, I guess, the route Nintendo will attack.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think I'm not gonna say it's Nintendo's fault that their stuff is so easy to pirate and emulate on PCs, but it's consistently happening to Nintendo. To my knowledge, the Wii was very easy to jailbreak. The DS was very easy to jailbreak. I'd love to tell you that the Wii U was, but honestly, I don't think anyone knows the Wii U existed, so I don't know if it was.
It was a fairly late in the day hack, but it's quite easy now. But yeah, it did take a lot longer. I think it's just because there wasn't the attention on it, but it has been jailbroken now quite successfully.
Yeah, and now we have the Switch, and like you said, Ace, Breath of the Wild was hacker mood in very quick succession upon the release of the Switch. Although I do believe the Breath of the Wild, the emulator that was popularly used to begin with was the Wii U one, wasn't it? So they released it on the Switch and then completely forgot that they'd released this game on the Wii U, which had already been jailbroken, and then everyone just emulated it on PC anyway.
Yeah.
But obviously, I feel like we have to legally say we don't condone piracy here at GameGrin. But from a anti-capitalist perspective that we all have and love having, people who are emulating this game on PC probably don't have Switches. They probably won't go buy the game. Do you think the best solution Nintendo has is just releasing this game on a PC?
Well, I think that would be the nicest option. It would be nice if Nintendo opened up their software library to other people, so it wasn't limited to their hardware. But that's never going to happen. but I do agree with you that it's like there's always that side of the piracy argument. It's like it's not actually a lost sale because the people doing this probably haven't actually got a legitimate way of playing it. You could say, well, they should be buying a system and the game then, but it's like it's not always that straightforward, is it? It's like not everyone's got 300 and 400 quid to spend on hardware and a game. But by that logic, they also, well, in that case, they shouldn't be playing it in the first place if they've got no legal way of playing it. So the argument has got many edges to it, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting issue.
I wrote an article for GameGrin.com a few years ago saying why I thought official emulators should exist. And I stand by it. If Nintendo put out Pokemon Red, you could download it to your PC and play it for £5. People would pay £5 to play Pokemon Red. If they released Breath of the Wild, you could download it, and it's got like an emulator wrapped around it to your PC. Like not even an emulator as a separate program. It just this now runs in an emulator when you open it up for 40. Well, it's not even 40 quid on the Switch. For 50 quid, then people would pay 50 quid for it.
Yeah,
or
I was just going to say, I definitely think that you're right. And if there's a legal avenue for people to play these games on other platforms, they would definitely do so. But you'll also get the argument that there'll always be people that don't and will illegally get hold of it, and you're never ever going to convert those people. There's always going to be people that take the illegal option because it's in their mind more convenient.
I do. I'm subscribed to a cracking game cracking subreddit. Not for personal use, for work use, because I like to keep an eye on things and see when AAA games are cracked before they're released, because that's always fun to see. And there's a lot of people in the comments saying, "Oh, I'm going to download this cracked game, and then if I like it, I'll buy it." And then there'll be like 6 people replying to that saying, "No, you won't. Just download the game, like, and play it. That's all you're going to do. So why try and lie to us? You're not going to score any points."
Yeah, it's true. I mean, to be fair, history has proven that people who pirate games are more likely to buy them than if you just completely cut their access to it. Similarly, people have also proven in the past that if you give people access, not just to video games, but to content in general, that they will pay for it when it's easy to get. Music was something that suffered for years because iTunes would charge you 99p a song, and Spotify came along and everyone was like, well, I'll pay a tenner a month then. Crack on. I love that. You know, and Game Pass is another proof that if you make things affordable and accessible, people will rather pay than go through the hassle of pirating. But it leads us on. Oh,
I was going to say, and to a degree, it's Netflix, although that's kind of gone in a kind of circle now when like everyone's having their own platforms again, so it's kind of splintering everybody again. But the idea was there originally.
But leading us into our main topic then, which is still about video game emulation, is a topic I've seen online quite a few times at this point, which is when it becomes okay to emulate a game. So people always talk about how they emulate games to preserve gaming history. That's why they preserve Super Mario Brothers from the 80s, because you can't buy a physical copy of Super Mario Brothers. Well, you can, but it'll cost you. So at what point, in your guys' opinions, at what point do you believe it is okay to emulate a game, whether it's because it's not accessible on certain hardware, the hardware it was on is dying, maybe it's just reached a certain age? At what point do you think you should be allowed to just go online and grab a copy?
If the publisher is no longer selling it, then people should be allowed to emulate it.
Yeah, if there's no legitimate way of obtaining or using that thing anymore in its original form, so like you can no longer buy the system that it's for, then that's fair game, as far as I'm concerned.
If I downloaded Home Alone 2 for the Mega Drive, I should be allowed to and not looked down upon by Sega, unless they start selling Home Alone 2 on the Switch. Then I should not be allowed to emulate that game anymore.
Okay. If companies started actually publishing emulated software and emulated games that you could pay for and use on your computer, would you both be happy to pay for that?
Yes.
The Switch Online, for instance. Bit annoyed that the N64 and Mega Drive games are going to be a price increase, but I'm not saying that they shouldn't charge for them.
Yeah, Switch Online's an interesting wrinkle because Nintendo have this amazing back catalogue of games, and they've never done right by them. They've had, since the Virtual Console, they've always had such a limited amount of their titles available, and it's frustrating because the slow trickle of games onto these services has been really, really frustrating. And I feel like people would use them more and be more tolerant of Nintendo's approach if they actually threw games on there. It's like just hire a person that's literal job is to do whatever technical task is necessary to wrap their emulator around a ROM, and stick it up there. Because
my theory is that they don't actually pay anyone to do it. Someone has to do it during their lunch breaks and personal time, and that's why we get so few.
Yeah, because it's like as excited as I am about the N64 games that are coming up, and there's some class games on there. Seeing Sin and Punishment being in the first batch is amazing because not very many people have played it. It did get a virtual console release, which a lot of people never got because it's towards the end of the Wii's life. So seeing it get another chance is great because it's a game everyone should play because it's one of Treasure's best games, and you owe it to yourself to play it.
Isn't the slow drip of Nintendo Online, isn't that because they want you to come back? Like they want to be able to splash something on a headline and be like, look, this is coming to Nintendo Switch Online, and people will resub again.
The thing is, though, if they just had a monthly drop, that'd be fine. It's been like 3 months now, I think, since the last SNES game was added to the roster, and you've got hundreds of awesome SNES games that you've legally got rights to. Yes, I'm sure there's quite a lot of legal wranglings with a lot of the library, but that Nintendo own themselves. The first party stuff they could be putting on there and just aren't is frustrating.
Back when Sega were doing Sega Forever, it'd be months, and at one point it was like 11 months between games coming out, and it's baffling why there's no regularity to retro games being made available.
No, definitely. I agree with that sentiment because these companies are very quick to tackle anyone who dares put these old games online and make them more accessible, but they also seem really reluctant to make those same games accessible even for a fee that people are clearly willing to pay. And I find that.
Well, it's like
baffling.
famously, if Super Mario Brothers on the Virtual Console was actually a ROM off the internet. It wasn't even from their own internal.
Yeah.
So it probably literally was just somebody that was asked, "Oh, get this game for me," and they just went to the nearest ROM site and got it. It's like, it's just show some love to your own history, and like because everyone else cares about it except for you. Show some care for your own history and actually put these things up, and people will buy them. They just get so frustrated because there's no avenue to, so they take the options that are available, which aren't ideal, but that's the only one that a lot of people have.
I think it's worth pointing out that people will pay for them. We need to emphasize that because the only time that Nintendo will go after a ROM site and not just DCMA, they'll take them to court, is when they are making money.
Exactly.
With like premium downloads or premium speeds or whatever these ROM sites have done in the past. that have gotten taken to court. People they've been taking people's money for these ROMs. Nintendo, take the hint. Charge money for these ROMs yourself, and people will pay you money.
I think that is a beautiful message to end on. Corporations, if you're listening, Ace Lister says, charge him more money and he will pay. That is the exact words he used. He was willing to pay. But
I didn't say I would pay, I said people would pay.
Thank you, Ace. Thank you, Pius, for joining me on this lovely autumn evening here in the UK. And thank you, everyone at home, for listening to our podcast. Please subscribe on Amazon Music, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere else that this may be uploaded. I don't think it is, but in case there is, subscribe there too. Or go to GameGrin.com and see all of our news, reviews, and general articles. There's a good piece up there about Silent Hill 2 right now. Check it out. But until next time, I have been Rhodes. Game on.